Every day, pharmacovigilance teams process thousands of individual case safety reports. The core of each report is the case narrative, a medically relevant summary of a patient's experience with an adverse event. Traditionally, a safety associate manually drafts this chronological account. Depending on the complexity of the medical history and the clinical course, a single narrative requires 30 to 60 minutes to write. That manual pace is colliding with surging data intake. Massive post-market surveillance operations and global vaccine rollouts yield case volumes that easily overwhelm standard processing teams. Compounding this volume are strict, non-negotiable compliance deadlines. Regulatory agencies like the FDA require expedited reporting for serious cases within 15 days and fatal or life-threatening cases within 7 days. To manage this workload, the industry is deploying auto-narrative technology. By applying natural language generation and artificial intelligence, safety databases can automatically draft these summaries, dropping the turnaround time from an hour to under 5 minutes per case. Manual writing also carries a persistent risk of transcription errors, where critical laboratory data or dates are mistyped by human operators. Automated systems pull directly from the database, eliminating transcription variants and enforcing structural consistency across thousands of reports. Pharmacovigilance is trapped between a high-volume reality and a high-precision mandate. Scaling operations by simply hiring more medical writers is a mathematically unsustainable response to modern data flows. Transitioning to automated narratives requires a comprehensive shift in system architecture to restructure how clinical data is synthesized. This conceptual model shows the central technical challenge. The system must ingest discrete, rigid safety data codes, like a MEDRA code for a specific adverse event, and accurately translate them into fluent, contextually sound medical prose. The technology carries dual mandates. It must achieve massive, rapid scale, but it must operate with zero tolerance for AI hallucination to remain compliant with global safety standards. To understand how this is achieved, we need to deconstruct the exact technical pipeline required to output a fully compliant safety report, tracking the data from initial extraction to final human validation. This diagram illustrates phase 1 of the architecture: data extraction and parsing. The system pulls source data and splits it into 2 separate processing streams. The upper stream handles structured data. These are rigid, tabular fields: patient demographics, suspect medications, and coded adverse events, pulled cleanly from safety databases like Oracle Argus. The lower stream tackles unstructured data. Vital clinical context is often trapped in chaotic free text files, such as physician letters, hospital discharge summaries, or autopsy reports. To extract meaning from these text-heavy documents, the pipeline relies on natural language processing, or NLP. Looking at this mock physician's letter, you can see a specific NLP capability called named entity recognition at work. The algorithm scans the unstructured text to identify and classify specific clinical concepts, extracting drug names, diagnostic dates, and overall medical sentiment. Once the entities are recognized, relation extraction algorithms link specific suspect drugs to the adverse events, while temporal parsing establishes the exact chronological timeline of the patient's symptoms. The sole function of this input layer is translation. It takes messy, disparate clinical reality and normalizes it into a unified, machine-readable format, ready for the engine to process. Moving to the center of our pipeline model, we reach phase 2, the engine layer. Here, the machine-readable data is drafted into actual narrative paragraphs using one of 2 methods. Engine A represents the traditional rule-based approach, also known as template-based generation. This method operates on strict conditional logic. The engine applies rules like, if the D challenge is positive, append this specific phrase. It stitches pre-written sentence fragments together based on the available data. While highly predictable and safe, the rule-based approach has distinct limitations. The output is highly repetitive and robotic, and the hard-coded templates struggle to capture the nuance of a complex, evolving clinical scenario. Engine B utilizes advanced large language models and natural language generation. By leveraging transformer networks, this engine can synthesize context-aware, highly fluent paragraphs. It reads like human-written prose, and natively handles edge cases that would break rigid, rule-based templates. Organizations must choose their priority at the engine layer: the absolute structural predictability of rules or the clinical fluency provided by neural networks. Utilizing large language models introduces a severe operational risk: hallucination. If a model generates plausible but factually incorrect clinical details, like inventing a pre-existing condition or hallucinating a lab result, patient safety is compromised and regulatory compliance is instantly broken. This diagram shows the architectural solution: strict data mapping guardrails. The system actively blocks the model from outputting any information that cannot be mapped directly back to the structured or unstructured source data. Regulatory agencies require a flawless audit trail. Therefore, every generated word must be traceable. Digital tethers track backwards from the final prose, proving exactly which database field or source document generated that specific clinical claim. In pharmacovigilance, artificial intelligence is strictly confined to translational synthesis. It is never granted creative freedom. Finally, this routing matrix at the far right of our pipeline represents Phase 3, the output layer. It demonstrates that in high-stakes medical environments, 100% lights-out automation is a myth. Simple cases, those with a single suspect drug, a single adverse event, and a clear timeline, are routed through a near-full automation track, requiring only light human review before finalization. Complex cases involving polypharmacy, fatalities, or complicated autopsy findings require a different approach. Here, the AI generates a structural skeleton, organizing the timeline and lab data, but routes the draft to a medical reviewer for heavy, substantive input. Regardless of the complexity tier, the auto-generated output is strictly treated as a first draft. It is never submitted to regulatory authorities without final human sign-off. This workflow removes the mechanical burden of typing and data transcription from the human operator, shifting their role to higher-order medical assessment and quality assurance. The most successful implementations rely on this stratified hybrid model. The AI executes the mechanical heavy lifting, amplifying the human expert's ability to focus on complex medical judgment. Zooming out to view the completed end-to-end pipeline, the efficiency gains become highly visible. Organizations report a 60 to 80% reduction in narrative writing time and up to a 50% reduction in total operational costs. However, these metrics depend entirely on pristine upstream data hygiene. Auto-narratives obey the strict law of garbage in, garbage out. If the source database is poorly coded, the generated narrative will reflect those exact deficiencies. Implementing this technology in a regulated environment requires exhaustive system validation. Organizations must comply with standards like GAMP5, executing rigorous installation, operational, and performance qualifications before a single narrative is submitted. European and U.S. regulatory bodies maintain a clear stance. Case narratives must be clinically meaningful, chronologically accurate, and free of omissions, regardless of whether a human or a software engine drafted the text. The raw speed of an automated pipeline is functionally useless unless backed by the rigorous data validation required to achieve ICH E2B R3 compliance. Looking ahead, the volume of adverse event data is set to multiply rapidly, driven by the expansion of patient-reported outcomes and constant data feeds from wearable health technology. As this data influx continues, automated narrative generation will stop being a competitive operational advantage and become a mandatory, table-stakes capability for any global life sciences operation. By stripping away the labor-intensive drafting process, pharmacovigilance professionals are free to execute the work that actually impacts public health: rigorous signal detection, and comprehensive benefit-risk analysis. This technology empowers medical writers to manage planetary-scale data, allowing them to safeguard patients with speed and accuracy that manual workflows cannot match. The future of drug safety operations is human-led and AI-accelerated.